Hello and welcome to episode 71 of the Dragons Are Real podcast. I'm your host, Pete Jones. So as you can see, we've had a bit of a rebranding on the channel. I did some designs in Canva for a new logo. I just felt time was right to have a new logo after 70 odd episodes. So did a load of designs in Canva and put them out to the subscribers on the various platforms with a choice. I think I give a choice of 20 of the 37 designs I had. And then we had a clear winner, which you see before you, and which is a nice monochrome. Sort of fits in with the old school style. And then my old Mokka, John Allen Large, one of my co-hosts from the old Purple Worm podcast, gave me some tips on how to add a bit of 3Dness to it. We've got some new music. Yeah, I know a couple of people complained that the old music was a bit loud, and yeah, so I've gone for something a bit more contemporary, and the music you hear at the start is Fast Car by Mokka, and I've done a bit of work on Audacity in that to fit that in, so hope you enjoy the new music to go along with the new logo. And yep, I'm very pleased with the new branding, so that will go on all the sort of social media and sort of have the one image, and it also works quite well as a sort of small icon or avatar for things like Discord and that sort of stuff. So what have I been up to otherwise? Well, busy old time in the old Dragon's House. I picked up Adventures in Middle-earth, Lore Master's Guide and Player's Guide. I'd previously got all the PDFs from the bundle of holding when Cubicle 7 gave up the rights to it, but I thought I saw a couple of books on the old Fleabay, and I thought, why not pick these the two hardbacks up, because I always find it easier to read the old hardbacks, so pick those up, and I'm going to talk about more in this episode. As for my 5e campaign, that's almost coming to a close. We've probably got one more session left if the party survives it, so they're in deep shit with that one. That's Horde of the Dragon King, Horde of the Dragon Queen even. So then I was looking at going on to something else, and I mentioned to my players that I just got Adventures in Middle-earth and quite fancied that. Within the hour, they decided, yeah, they wanted to play that. We've now got a party of dwarves. Yeah, I'll talk about more of that after the break. And the only other thing, as you know, I've got a YouTube channel, and I've been doing some episodes on different virtual tabletops. And one that's been on my radar now for probably a couple of years now is the Mythic Table. And I've now joined the Mythic Table team in a very small role. Mythic Table is a open source free virtual tabletop, and they've just released their first playable to Patreons and onto their Discord. So I'm going to be helping the team with some of the documentation and sort of the QA, quality assurance for documentation and that sort of thing. So excited for that. So yeah, the first playable out is that, bare bones. And we're hoping that by the end of the month there should be a public release of the first playable. So quite a bit of work to do on that one, but looking forward to that. So let's get on to Adventures in Middle-earth. So let's get on to the review, Adventures in Middle-earth. As I said in the intro, it was a Cubicle 7 product, but Cubicle 7 have now lost the license or given the license up, and they are doing a second edition of Adventures in Middle-earth and the One Ring, and it's going to be hosted by Free League. So I managed to pick up the two books, as I said, on eBay, and it's based on D&D 5e, which is probably my favourite iteration of Dungeons & Dragons since the old BX days. It's very faithful to the old editions of D&D, but with some modern design philosophies. If you don't know how to play D&D 5e, have you been living under a rock? Very easy. Roll a d20, add a modifier or two, and you're trying to beat a target number, and then you cause damage on hit points, and that's basically D&D 5e in a nutshell. So what is Adventures in Middle-earth then? So it's built on the core D&D 5e rules, and it's set 5 years after the Battle of the Five Armies. For those who don't know your Tolkien history, it is the point between the original story of The Hobbit and the mega trilogy, The Lord of the Rings, it's set in that period between those two periods. And it's 5 years after the Battle of the Armies of the Five Ring. And you've got a few decades of time there to play in. That you've got the lore of the two books either side. So it's quite a rich time period. And it's predominantly set in the Wilderlands. Now, the beauty of Tolkien is that a lot of the places get mentioned in passing, and they are not really sort of given a lot more sort of detail. So it gives you the chance as players and a GM to put it add a bit more detail. So as you would imagine, there's had to be quite a few changes to the classes and backgrounds and all that sort of stuff for Adventures in Middle-earth, and this sure has. It's also a low fantasy setting, so you've got no magicians or clerics or any of that sort, because let's face it, in the old Middle-earth Tolkien, it was only the likes of Sauron and Gandalf that had the real magic. So the cultures that we've got, which was formerly races in D&D 5e, so we have Bardings, Beornings, Dunedain, Dwarves of the Lowly Mountain, the Elves of Mirkwood, Hobbits of the Shire, Men of Bree, Men of the Lake, Men of Minas Tirith, Riders of Rohan, and the Woodmen of the Wilderland. So predominantly you've got three non-men races, your Elves, your Dwarves, and your Hobbits. Onto the classes, a big change with the classes as well. We have got our Scholar, which is our learned person. We have our Slayer, Treasure Hunter, a Wanderer, a Warden, and a Warrior. And as you would expect, each of these has a number of feats that they acquire. And you can see when you start reading these feats that they really are themed in well with the Tolkien. You can see that the authors really do know their subject and are great lovers of it. And the way Adventures in Middle-earth works with the One Ring, the One Ring was the original system that the guys who designed Adventures in Middle-earth did, and it is a complete framework and system on its own. And then what they did was they've converted the One Ring to D&D 5e. So basically they've kept all the same artwork and all the same fluff that they'd written for the One Ring, but use 5e mechanics. So obviously it's a big save for them. It means that they can use the same material, and it's not double the work, and it's just a matter of converting over things like stats and working out how the things like the classes and the cultures and all that sort of stuff works in 5e. So, and obviously it opens up to a bigger audience. Then we have virtues, which are sort of special gifts and talents, and the men races get these one of these at the beginning of the game. Other races get them as they go up the levels. It's got a leveling system just as it has in 5e, and at each up to 20 levels, at each of the levels you get new proficiencies and new feats. And these virtuals are special gifts. And again, there's open virtues, which anyone can have at any of the races. And then we've got race-specific virtues. And again, these all fit in very nicely with the theme. Next up, we have backgrounds, and everyone gets a background. And these sort of determine how your class answers their call to adventure. They give you sort of qualities, specialities, hope and despair, which you can roll for randomly, or you can pick. And these do two things. First of all, they give you some hooks for your role playing. But secondly, for the GM, it gives ways that you can award inspiration to your players. So if they're playing their backgrounds, then it's a good way to reward them for following those backgrounds. And again, these are all fit in very, very nicely, the very theme very well for the Tolkien background. Then we get onto the equipment, and the equipment list has been pared down from 5e, and basically only weapons and armour specifically mentioned in the Tolkien works are included in the book. It's all very themed. Armour has been renamed and weapons have been named where appropriate. And there's one new weapon, which is the mattock, which is a heavy digging implement that the dwarves tended to use. So that's the addition. They've also altered the prices because in Lord of the Rings and in Adventures in Middle-earth, we've got changes to the the money. Gold is not so common. Everything is done in silver, and we've got 12 copper coins is 1 silver, and then if you do find a gold, then that is equal to 20 silver pennies. Then we get on to the new rules, and the first one of these is journeys. Now, if you've read any of Tolkien's work, quite often the journeys that the Fellowship and other characters within the books took was really important to the story. So there's an entire system here for planning out journeys and how to do them. And I really like these rules. Basically, the first thing the players have to do is when they're making a journey, they have to set out the route. And there's 2 maps. There's a player's map and there's a GM's map. And the player's map is obviously got less detail on what they know about the area. And they plan out the route that they are going to take. And then the GM will look at his map and superimpose that route on top of his map and work out the peril rating of the journey. And the peril rating is a number between 1 and 5, which can increase if it's winter conditions, depending on where the majority of the sort of journey takes place. And if you're using things like ponies and boats, then that reduces the peril rating. But you get this peril rating and record the numbers 1 to 5. And then each of the players then takes a roll for the journey, and each person must have 1 roll. And if there's 4 different rolls, and if there's more players, then you can have multiple people doing the same thing apart from the guide. So you have a guide who's in charge of all decisions concerning the route, rest and supplies. You have a scout who's in charge of setting up the camp and opening new trails. You have a hunter in charge of finding food in the wild, and you have a lookout who's in charge of keeping watch. And each of these roles will have specific things to do within this mini game. So the guide player makes an embarkation roll by rolling a d12, and it's modified by their survival proficiency, half the wisdom bonus minus the peril rating. And the lawmaster then looks this up on the table and either relays the result to them, or he hints at the results if you want to do it like that. And it can mean things like on the journey that you've got meagre supplies and poor meals. It can mean that you've got fine weather. So loads of thematic stuff here. Then the next thing you do is you work out how many events are going to occur on this journey. And if it's a short journey, you're getting 1d2 challenges. On a medium journey, you get 1d2 plus 1, and on long journeys, 1d3 plus 2. And the terrain can also modify this roll. And then you've got a table for the events that can occur on the journey. And in the supplement books, then these event tables have also been tweaked even more to sort of fit in with the different areas of the campaign. And again, that's a dice roll. And then you play through these events and noting down any results that may be appropriate. And then final part of the minigame is the arrival phase, where you roll a d8 modified by terrain to see what happens when the company arrives at the destination. Do they get there in one piece, or do they get there in a bit of a state? And things like exhaustion are really important rules within Adventures in Middle-earth. Another important thing is that you can't do a long rest on a journey. So journeys are an important part of the whole adventure, and as I say, it's a mini game in itself. Then we get on to the shadow. Every player has shadow points which start at 0, and you get shadow points for experiencing sort of distressing events or tainted areas and such things like that. And as you accumulate these shadow points, once they get to a point where they equal your wisdom score, then bad things start to happen and you start succumbing to corruption. So it's for the players to try and keep these shadow points down if they can, and dealing with them as you go along. And obviously, in this setting, it's assumed that the players are going to be good because everybody in Middle-earth is of a good nature and they're all trying to keep the dark forces at bay. So if you like playing evil parties, then you won't be playing this game. Good parties only. The other things they've added to the rules, which I really like, is audiences, so that when adventurers go to meet important people within the setting, whether it be kings or princes or even famous characters, there's a whole set of rules here, how to seek an audience and what sort of result will happen when they do seek an audience. And the other big thing they've added is called the fellowship phase. Now, the game is set over many years, and it's sort of assumed that adventurers will only do 1 or 2 adventures per year, and then after those 1 or 2 adventures, then there's a fellowship phase, just like there is in the books. And basically what happens is that the players go to a place of sanctuary, somewhere where they are safe, and they can do things like rest, recover, train. I mean, all the players, all the characters can, if so wish, go to the same place, or they can go to their own sanctuary, split up, and then come back together again for another adventure, which is just like it was in the books. So in this way, you can play a campaign over several sessions, but it can be sort of a few years. And again, this fits in really nicely with the theme. Looking through the books, it really sort of inspires you. I was a big fan of Middle-earth. Read the books when I was very young. I've read Lord of the Rings a few times now. And this gives you an ideal opportunity to play in that setting. And I also like the fact that there is very little magic, because when you play D&D in the old days, you were always inspired by the Middle-earth and Lord of the Rings, but the magic was very high, which was not like how the books were. A quick mention of the Lore Master's Guide. That's got lots of tips on how Lore Master or the GM should run the game. What some people might not like is that there isn't a great variance of monsters in it, or bestiary, but that's because in Middle-earth there wasn't that much spread of different types of monsters. So from what my overview of the game is, it's going to be a lot less dungeony like 5e. I think there's going to be more emphasis on role-playing, a bit more chance for role-playing. So yeah, really looking forward to it. I will keep you posted on how this goes. We're starting in hopefully 3 weeks. So yep, Adventures in Middle-earth. If you like your Tolkien, I can highly recommend this system. I know they're going to make some changes for the 2nd edition, but the 1st edition, as far as I'm concerned, is very playable, and you can pick it up for reasonable prices on auction sites. People are getting rid of the stock now, so you might be able to pick yourself up a bargain. So check that out. So that's all for this episode, and I'll catch you all on the flip side.